have imagined that less than 80 years since the end of the most monstrous immorality in the history of human civilization, that Jew hatred will be on the rise, including in Europe, of all places in Europe, and including even here, the most philo-Semitic country ever, the United States of America, where every poll shows that Jews are not only tolerated in the United States, Jews are embraced, championed. And the state of Israel is loved here in the United States. But even here, anti-Semitism rising. And that points not to any particular flaw among Europeans or any particular pathologies here in the United States. What it points to is how utterly insatiable this hatred of the Jewish people is. That it could not even be sated by the Holocaust. So what's going on? And this is the question I hear all the time. I heard it when I was Special Envoy, and I hear it today. What is going on? I mean, we see it in the news just from the last few weeks, right? It is a constant drumbeat, one thing after another, coming from different ideological camps, from different sources. And as you know, I don't have to tell you this, the American Jewish community is on edge to an extent that, frankly, I have never seen in my lifetime. Truly fearful. So first we have to ask, what is going on? What is driving this horrific rise in anti-Semitism that we see all around us? So first of all, let's talk about ideology. There are three ideological camps that are driving the rise in Jew hatred. And by the way, these ideological camps could not be more different one from the other. One is the ethnic supremacists on the far right. And far-right ethnic supremacism is something with which all of us are familiar. It is the age-old anti-Semitism that used to be religious, became ethnic, national. It was, of course, the anti-Semitism of the Nazis, but it's not gone. We see it all the time. And it's dangerous, and it's violent. It led to the murder of 11 people in synagogue on Shabbat in Pittsburgh. And 6 months to the day later, it led to the murder of another worshiper in Chabad of Poway. And by the way, when I was Special Envoy, I visited another scene of a synagogue shooting that took the lives of several bystanders. The shooter didn't get into the synagogue. That was in Halle, Germany. And I chose to arrive in Halle, Germany on the very date, the anniversary of the Pittsburgh Tree of Life shooting, a year later. And I did that specifically to make the case that this horrific series of murders around the world it's not a German issue or a European issue or an American issue. It's a global issue. As we see the far right rising both in its force and in its venom and in its violent expression, and it is deeply dangerous. This is the anti-Semitism of vile internet chat rooms, of torchlit marches in Eastern and Central Europe, the likes of which we thought we had long since graduated. And it's the anti-Semitism, again, of these violent shooters who take the lives of Jews and non-Jews, anyone who is in their midst. These are people who, by the way, hate anybody not like them, but of course Jews most of all. The next ideological source is militant Islamism, which we might have forgotten about since 9/11. Benjamin, we talked about how that's ancient history. But the fact of the matter is, militant Islamism and radicalized Arab or non-Arab Muslim communities is the chief source of major violence, lethal violence, against Jews in Western Europe. It is the reason why, after giving a speech for Kabbalat Shabbat at a synagogue in Paris, as I emerged onto the beautiful boulevards of Paris, a fellow synagogue goer said to me, "Take your kippah off. It's not safe to walk in the streets of Paris with a kippah." Now, I won't pass judgment about whether that's true or not, or about whether that's the right response or not. But the very fact that a Jewish synagogue attendee feels that that's the case tells you everything you need to know. By the way, I didn't take my kippah. The third source of Jew hatred, and this, I would say, is the source of Jew hatred that is growing at the fastest pace and capturing so many of our institutions in the United States, and in Europe as well, is the anti-Semitism of the radical left. It's often called the new anti-Semitism, but I'll tell you there's nothing new about the new anti-Semitism. It's the same old Jew hatred. This is the anti-Semitism of the elites, of the neo-Marxists who have worked their ideology into what's often called the woke intersectional conception of the American social dynamic, the idea that there are oppressed and oppressors and that our entire social paradigm is defined through a perpetual, inescapable struggle of the oppressed against the oppressors. And the oppressors now are categorically oppressors, not by virtue of socioeconomic class, like the old Marxism, but by virtue of race or skin color. Such that whites are privileged oppressors, people of color are the oppressed, and any societal stature that a person who is white gains is categorically immoral, categorically done by stealing it from someone else. And exhibit A among the white oppressive class is, of course, Jews. Jewish privilege and white privilege are now interchangeable in this lexicon. And this is a lexicon that is, first of all, factually correct, as we all know. There's nothing categorical about it. You can be white and privileged. You can be white and unprivileged. You can be black and privileged. You can be black and unprivileged. This is something that we all know. But it's also deeply immoral. To define any category of person as categorically immoral is racist in itself. And of course, to define Jews as categorically immoral is, well, what? It's anti-Semitic. And that's what we're facing. Now think about this for a moment. The ethnic supremacist on the far right, the neo-Marxist on the radical left, militant Islamist, I mean, my goodness. There is nothing these camps should agree on. And yet somehow they're joined together in happy harmony when it comes to hating the Jewish people. And working, by the way, sometimes in unison, yes, in concert. Bizarre alliances between the far right and militant Islamism. You wouldn't think the far right likes Muslims or Arabs. And yet they work together and they borrow each other's imagery in perfect form. I mean, you can compare right-wing imagery, which is taken directly from Der Stürmer, Nazi Germany, and militant Islamic characterization of Jews. It is exactly the same, and they work together and collaborate. More surprising still is what's called the red-green alliance. The left aligned with militant Islam, the left professing to be pluralistic and tolerant, pro-gay, pro-women, allied with whom? With militant Islam. So you have these marches, queers for Palestine. Where are queers welcomed in the Palestinian Authority? Never mind Gaza, we won't even talk about Gaza, and the PA. And so the absurd alliances together. Oh, by the way, I left one out. What about right and left? No, they can't ever work together. Let me tell you what was reported to me by student leaders on a prominent campus in the United States. Now we are seeing, the student leader said to me, far-right, neo-Nazi type groups coming onto campus. I said, really, onto campus? Far-right groups welcomed in the bastion of leftism? How is that possible? Student leader said, because they discovered, the right that is, that if they modify their language and talk about Zionism and Israel instead of Jew and the Jewish communities, suddenly they have, to use a campus term, a safe space to operate. So here we even see the right and the left working in concert when it comes to Jewry. And this is causing an alarming rise of anti-Semitism, and anti-Semitism coming from varied sources. So people are saying, how can it be that we're seeing far-right groups, neo-Nazis, and then we see leaders like Kanye West, influencers, I should say, like Kanye West. What do they have in common? How are they working together? And again, we're seeing the merging of these ideologies and the collaboration of those groups and those ideological camps that are coming together and working together to promote Jew hatred. And to promote Jew hatred to great effect. But let me talk about the chief vehicle through which these ideologies spread. We talked about campaigns and messaging, right? There's the message, and then there's the driving of the message, right? What delivers that message? Well, today, we have the most effective delivery vehicles of messaging we have ever seen in the history of the world. It's the new media. It's the internet and social media. And the real question of why, the real answer to the question of why anti-Semitism is rising precipitously, it is rising in direct proportion with the rise of the influence of the internet and social media in our lives. We're seeing it over the last 10 years. The rise in anti-Semitism as haters who used to have to do real work to persuade people. You know, you have to sit face to face and sell it. You've got to organize rallies, marches, meetings. That takes work, it takes activism. Today, a miscreant at the speed of a click can sit in some darkened basement and drive across the globe the most venomous, hateful thoughts to the likes and to the shares of tens of thousands potentially. That has been a game changer. And that's the real story. And so what can we do about it? I just spoke in Palm Beach, and right before I went up to the podium, a member of the audience pulled me aside and said, before you start, I have a question. We get these speakers on anti-Semitism who come here and they depress the hell out of us and then they leave. Are you going to do that? And I said, no, I'm going to depress the hell out of you, and then I'm going to have a drink, and then I'm going to leave. I already had my drink, so but no, I'm not going to do that. I would never do that. By the way, not only is that not nice to do, the fact of the matter is, if I were not an optimist, I would never have taken the appointment. I took the appointment to join the administration and to work for one of my heroes, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, because I know that there are things that we can do. I know that there are specific policies and remedies that if we implement them, will not only contain this rise in Jew hatred, because if all we do is contain it, we failed, it will roll back this rise in Jew hatred. And so let me talk about that, because that's the bottom line. The bottom line is, what can we do about it? So let me tell you some of the things we focused on. Number one, defining anti-Semitism. Now, I'm a military officer. If you don't know your enemy, you ain't going to beat your enemy. You have to understand your enemy. And with anti-Semitism, that means defining it. And so thankfully, we have a global gold standard for defining anti-Semitism. It's called the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance Definition of Anti-Semitism. And it's been phenomenal. It's been an enormously powerful tool in recognizing and condemning Jew hatred. Why? Because in addition to the definition, which is not particularly interesting, as you might imagine, there are 11 included examples of so-called contemporary manifestations of anti-Semitism. And those examples capture not only the old anti-Semitism, you know, Jews responsible for all malevolences in the world, controlling the media, disloyal to our country, more loyal to Israel, but it also captures the anti-Semitism that cloaks itself as Israel hatred and anti-Zionism. And so one example, denying the Jewish people the right of self-determination. For example, by claiming that the existence of the State of Israel is a racist endeavor. An example. Subjecting the State of Israel to a double standard to which no other democracy is held. An example. Equating Israel with Nazi Germany. An example. And so the power of the IHRA definition, IHRA, right? IHRA. The IHRA definition is that it allows us to point to an authoritative, non-controversial source and say, you see, what you're saying, what you're promoting, that's anti-Semitism. It's not about how I feel. We like to talk now, the trend now is to talk about feelings. It's not about feelings. We have an authoritative definition. You're being anti-Semitic. And it's not about censorship. We don't censor, even vile speech, thank God. First Amendment is not a burden, it's a gift. But condemnation is something we can do, and the IHRA definition is a tool of education, and ultimately it's a tool of condemnation. It was one of my top diplomatic asks. I'm proud to say that because of my work in government and since, we now have over 1,000 entities in the world, 33 countries, a majority of US states, hundreds of provinces and cities and municipalities, hundreds of educational institutions and sports teams that have adopted the IHRA definition, including, most recently, the entire, unanimously, City Council of the City of Los Angeles. Most recently. Very, very powerful. And so number one is defining anti-Semitism, the IHRA definition. We have the gold standard. Second of all, thank you so much. I caught a little cold in Athens. It was in Athens, not Wuhan, I promise. That's where I was. Second of all, we have got to intervene in the tragic path of ruin on which so many of our young people are being drawn and seduced. And that is a path of radicalization and hate. It's being done through the internet and social media, as we just talked about. But when law enforcement authorities have the chance to intervene in the life of a young man, and I'm being here now gender specific because it's always men, and they're often young, starts as teenagers, we would be crazy not to do it. Now, when I was special envoy, I met with law enforcement leaders from seven separate German states. And not only in Germany, but I met with leaders in the United States, throughout New Jersey, county prosecutors. And let me let you in on a secret. Nobody knows how to handle radicalized criminal defendants, especially when the crime is mild. I was asked about this all over the world, from law enforcement leaders in Europe and in the United States, all over the place. They say, what if it's a misdemeanor? Vandalism. What do you do? I mean, you don't have real teeth. What can you do with someone like that? Or a juvenile? How do you handle it? Well, let me tell you how to handle it. I was a criminal prosecutor for a decade and a half. I was a gang prosecutor in Los Angeles County. By the way, I'm here to confirm the rumor. There are gangs in Los Angeles. I don't know if you knew that, but I'm here to say there are. And I will tell you that when I prosecuted hate crimes as well, when I had a radicalized defendant or even a suspect pre-filing, I would never, ever, ever let that kid go unless I forced them to undergo an anti-radicalization program, a tolerance program. And I will tell you, I've seen it change these kids' lives. Because oftentimes they have, in fact, almost always, they have no idea what the consequences are of the lives they're leading. By the way, if they were circumspect, they wouldn't be in trouble in the first place. They haven't thought out what they're doing. And when they go to, let's say, a Holocaust museum, and they undergo a real program that shows them where their hate leads, the disastrous ruin that their worldview and their hate will take them where that place where it shocks them to the core. They're rattled, and they say, "My God, that's not who I am. That's not where I want to go." And it works 100% of the time. No, nothing works 100% of the time, but it works a lot. And I've done this for felons. I've done this for misdemeanor defendants, and I've even done this for young defendants who haven't gotten in trouble before, where we've never filed the case. I sat them down and I said, "I'll make you a deal. I'm not going to file this case against you. But in exchange, I want you to do something for me." They don't say no when you make that deal. You're going to close the case, no filing? Okay. And it works. We need to develop these online versions so that if there isn't a museum or a program in a city, every single defendant across the United States and across the world can be made to undergo an anti-radicalization program. Third, cyber hate. We've got to counter the tsunami of anti-Semitism and hatred on the internet and social media. And if we don't do it, we are lost. A recent European study found the period of time required to radicalize a person to violence, to the point where they actually undertake violent action, is a fraction of the time when the radicalization process occurs online as compared with through offline means. So now we have data. We've got to counter this. I'm proud to say that in government, I organized and Secretary Pompeo convened the first ever U.S. government-sponsored conference on combating online hate. And it was phenomenally impactful because we focused on solutions and we created working groups between internet platforms and civic society and governments to work together, not to censor. Again, we don't believe in that in the United States, but to work to counter this tsunami of venom
that we're seeing on the internet and social media. We've got to do that. And by the way, let me talk about us. It's not just at the government level. Each and every one of us, we've got families, we've got kids and grandkids. We've got to teach our families how to be safe consumers of the internet. No parent would allow their kid to wander unescorted in a neighborhood of filth and prostitution and violence and drugs, and yet we allow our kids to walk unescorted in those neighborhoods all the time in cyberspace. What do we think? We think it's not dangerous? We think it won't affect them? Of course it will. And so we've got to start talking about this and teaching about it. We've got to insist that our schools teach how to be safe users of the internet. Just like we teach our kids, I'm a New Yorker, how to ride the subway safe. It's no different. And so we've got to counter online hate. Next, Israel. We have got to tear down this false distinction between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. There is no distinction. And that's why in our administration I'm so proud that we worked on initiatives that changed U.S. policy on this. Secretary Pompeo stood in front of 18,000 activists at an AIPAC policy conference and said, let me go on the record. By the way, when the Secretary of State says, let me go on the record, that means fasten your seatbelts. This isn't about to be a slip of the tongue. This is policy. He said anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. In Jerusalem, he stood next to Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he said, we're announcing new policy for the United States. The global BDS movement is anti-Semitic. It's a manifestation of anti-Semitism. The United States is stating it. The proudest thing I did when I was in government was work on an initiative that's dramatically different from all the others and everything I've talked to you about. If you paid attention, everything I've said, countering hate, defining anti-Semitism, condemning, it's all defensive. These are all defensive measures. Well, that's appropriate. When you're confronted with an assault, you've got to defend against it. But as anybody knows, you can't win a war or a battle, or by the way, even a football or basketball game, if all you do is play defense. If you don't have an offensive game, you're done. So what is our offensive game? We do a lot of defense, but how do we go on the offense against what is essentially a worldview? Jew hatred, right? It's an idea. Ultimately, I would argue it's a spiritual sickness. How do you go on the offense against that? There's one clear way to do that, and it's through education. And I'm not talking about education about anti-Semitism or about the Holocaust. I'm talking about education in philo-Semitism, because the opposite of anti-Semitism is intolerance. The opposite of anti-Semitism is an affection for, an understanding of, an appreciation of the remarkable, breathtaking biblical story of the Jewish people and the values of Judaism that have shaped Western civilization and, by the way, made the existence of the United States possible. Our founding fathers were wrapped around the Jewish story. That's why at some pretty good New England institutions like Yale, there's Hebrew on the coat of arms. By the way, Hebrew was debated and considered to be the official language of the United States. That's the extent to which our founding fathers saw the biblical story and the Exodus as inspiring them. That's why so many of our towns and cities are called Zion and Jerusalem and Salem, by the way. Salem is Jerusalem, right? Shalem, it's in the Tanakh. It's in, by the way, it's in Genesis. Abraham spoke with the king of Shalem, Salem, right? We're in a city that's an example of philo-Semitism. And here is a really ridiculous fact. We have a vehicle for doing exactly this, for driving a philo-Semitic narrative, for turning the tables and actually dropping the strategic weapon on Jew hatred, not just a tactical or defensive weapon. Do you know that for 42 years, every single president of the United States, everyone, with overwhelming bipartisan authorization of Congress, has declared a period of time for doing exactly this? It's called Jewish American Heritage Month. Have you heard about it? Don't feel bad, by the way. Nobody has. It's America's best kept secret. I bet you all have heard about Black History Month, right? I see yes. So I think nods. You know why? Because during Black History Month, things happen. There are announcements. There are public service messages. Netflix does a thing. There are curricula. Schools talk about it. There are posters. Teachers teach about it. And by the way, thank God, because just like, it's the same thing. The opposite of anti-black racism is intolerance. The opposite of anti-black racism is appreciating what American blacks, African Americans have brought to American culture and to American society. That's why we have Black History Month. But for 42 years, we have this for Jews, and we do what? Nothing? Zero? But that's the truth. Zero. And so we launched a philo-Semitism initiative in 3 separate countries. And when I left office, we were doing that right here in the United States, and I'm still doing it, working with amazing organizations, so that we can inject into Jewish American Heritage Month the kind of content of which the Jewish community is worthy, so that we do turn the tables. And instead of letting the haters define us, we define them as standing against all of those marvelous things we brought to America and to the world. Now, those are our initiatives, but I want to end on campuses. I want to end on campuses because if we don't fix campuses, we are truly in danger. I talked about the internet and social media as a driver of Jew hatred. There's another driver of Jew hatred, and that is our educational institutions that have been usurped into the service of malevolent forces and turned against us. By the way, turned against American values. The idea that these anti-American ideologies are being preached and taught in universities and now in high schools and in middle school is appalling. And it's working. It's working. Now, let me give you an example. A kid at a premier university, the best in this country, gave me the answer sheet to his math class. I made a copy and kept a copy. It's priceless. You know, the integral of so-and-so is such and such, the derivative of such and such. And so, and then it says, another day in the occupied Palestinian territories, Zionist forces murdering children, and then it goes back to math. The kid who gave this to me, in a voice reflecting utter exhaustion, said to me, in math class, I can't escape this. Even in math class, that's right. The answer is that's right, because just like the old anti-Semitism, the new anti-Semitism is just as insane and obsessive in its focus on its target. And it is a 24/7 assault. And in case you think it might go over the heads of people, a recent survey of Jewish students on university campuses in America found that Jewish American students are less supportive of Israel than ever before measured, more inclined to identify with Israel's enemies than ever before measured. And the crisis, a word that they use, the crisis in the evangelical Christian community is the degree to which their young people are being lost on Israel. I was speaking in Washington, a pastor interrupted me. I wasn't even talking about campuses. He says, yeah, let me get down to the bottom line. So let me tell you what's going on in our community. We raise our kids to be pro-Israel as a matter of faith. For us, it's theology. And then we send them away to college, and they come back turned. I spoke at a big rally, a pro-Israel rally for Yom HaTzmaut, and a Christian kid, this high school, a college kid ran up to me, and he said, I'm here to volunteer. I love Israel, where there are a few of us here. I said, I have a question for you. Let me ask you something. Is this true, what I'm hearing, that your generation of evangelicals are less supportive of Israel than your parents' generation? He says, oh, my goodness, of course, it's all around us. I said, tell me something, Matthew. Why do you think that is? You know what he said to me? He said, because we also go to college. We also hear it all the time, even in math class. And lest anyone think that this is something that affects the student world, not our world, the world of campuses. Let me tell you about the most disturbing meeting I had in my 2 years as Special Envoy. I met with a UK Labour Member of Parliament who walked out of the Labour Party because this MP said, I won't sit at the same table with anti-Semites. This was before the election, when Jeremy Corbyn was ascendant and might become Prime Minister. And this MP said to me, I want to tell you something. This disaster that we have in England all started on the campuses. But we did nothing because we said, wow, it's only students. And then it moved into the Labour Party. And we said, it's only a far-left fringe. And today they won and we lost, and I no longer have a political party. I want you to know my hair stood on end. Now think about this. Why are the forces of Jew hatred focusing on campuses? Why are they focusing on schools? Because that's our future. They know that the future leaders of corporate America and civic society and government are in our universities today. And the more elite university, the more they're active on those campuses, including some pretty good schools not far from here, like Harvard, where there's a disastrous anti-Semitic, anti-Israel movement on campus. And so our enemies understand that if you invest in the future, it's a force multiplier for them. So now let me ask you a question. Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Stanford, Cal, Berkeley, my alma mater, where are the leaders going to come from? Those schools, right? But how about, can you think of universities that will produce even greater leaders than those? Can you think of what those universities might be? I'll tell you what they are. West Point, Annapolis, the U.S. Air Force Academy. The U.S. military academies will produce a level of leadership for the United States of America that dwarfs Harvard and Princeton and Yale. And that's demonstrable. The Secretary of State of the United States and the Secretary of Defense of the United States were classmates from West Point. They were in the same graduating class. So think about this. If the cadets are turned against the Jewish people, what's left? What will America become? If the guardians of our safety, if those people who carry the flag and preserve the privileges and the power of the United States of America, if they are lost to American values, what hope do we have in this country? And that's why I'm here. Because of all the Jewish organizations doing all sorts of amazing things, nobody is doing what Benjamin's doing. Nobody is taking cadets, the future leaders of the military and the future leaders of America, and bringing them to Israel at the time when they're most impressionable, and giving them a tour that's breathtaking. You know what it is to go to the death camps and then go to Israel? Let me tell you a story. President Trump sent the first ever official U.S. government delegation to March of the Living. I was with 7 other ambassadors, our ambassador to Switzerland and France and Portugal and, of course, Poland and Israel. And we made that horrific walk from Auschwitz to Birkenau. Horrific. I was watching their faces. These are all political appointees, senior leaders, business. They walked through gas chambers. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Yeah, they learned about it, of course, but it's night and day different. And then arm in arm, we made that horrific walk from Auschwitz to Birkenau, along with students and faith leaders and government leaders. And then that night, we got on a plane and flew to Israel. Exactly what Benjamin and Rosita are doing for these cadets. We flew to Israel. The very next night happened to be Shabbat. And we were again arm in arm and shoulder to shoulder, but this time at the Kotel, dancing with IDF soldiers and students and faith leaders. Yes, dancing. I will tell you that contrast between death and life, between immorality and the beauty of the state of Israel, between darkness and light, was incomprehensible. One of the ambassadors, again, these are senior people, broke into tears. He was sobbing, literally sobbing openly. He couldn't digest it. Imagine what this does for kids who are 18 and 19 and 21, who are cadets who have committed themselves to defending our country and to leading it. Do you know what a game changer that is? So I ask you, what could you possibly spend your money on that is a better investment for our future than that? What? Now I want to leave you with this. 10 days from tonight, will be Hanukkah. And of course, Hanukkah is all about oil, right? Lasted 8 days, and we all know about the oil. A rabbi asked a beautiful question. He said, the miracle, the oil was supposed to last 1 day, it lasted 8. And so we light candles for 8 days, right? 8 miracles, except, wait, there's a problem. There weren't 8 miracles. There were 7 miracles. The oil would have lasted for 1 day. You don't need a miracle for that. So why don't we light 7 candles? And the answer is profound and beautiful and inspiring. The answer is that the biggest miracle of them all was that there were partisans at all who, in the face of the kind of challenges they faced, were even willing to do what they did. That's the miracle. The miracle is that the Maccabees existed and the Maccabees were willing to lead and risk their lives for the sake of the Jewish future. That's the real message of Hanukkah, not about oil and fattening donuts. The real message of Hanukkah is that we all can be partisan. That no matter what the challenges, and the challenges we face today are nothing compared to the challenges they faced with Antiochus and the desecration of Jerusalem and the temple. We all can be partisan. And you know why? Because you have the ability to invest in causes that change the world and assure the Jewish future. And that's why we're all here. And that's why, Benjamin, I salute you and thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.